Good morning. I get paid by the word, that's why my title's so long. But in any case, I'd like to introduce myself. I spent 12 years at Barnes & Noble, finishing up my career, having developed the Nook for the company. Big believer in the tablet space, big believer in color for tablets with respect to magazines. That was always the initiative that we had focused on with the Nook Color back in 2010. It's kind of interesting right now. We're dealing with the iPad coming up on its second anniversary. I think April 3rd of 2010 was when it launched. And so while it's been a very short period of time, it's been a very tumultuous time, and more interesting when you think about the economy, where it's at, occurring at the same time, and also the move of advertising dollars over to new online initiatives. So not only do we have to deal with new technology, we have to deal with an economy as well as advertising dynamics changing. In any case, I think this is going to be a great panel discussion, and there's a lot of interesting things that we're going to talk about in the next 30 minutes. So with that, I'd like to introduce Keith Barraclough, CTO, EVP Products from Next Issue Media. We have Jeanniey Mullen, Global Executive VP, Chief Marketing Executive at Zinio, and Jonathan Shar, GM, Digital Newsstand, Barnes & Noble. So I'll start with Keith. If you could talk about what is really your outlook for the digital newsstand of the future, given that we're 2 years into this.
Yeah, well, so we launched back in the middle of last year with the first version, a preview of the digital newsstand. We're very focused on the design for tablet content. So we've sort of come at it from the early interactive content, and we've seen the consumer really engage with those magazines. I think the thing that we also realized early on was that discoverability was an important part of the newsstand, and I think when Apple actually launched their newsstand, I think there was a pretty marked improvement in sales when everyone actually realized there were digital magazines. I think the next phase, and what we actually did with our magazine stand, was to make sure that you can highlight the interesting content, that you can highlight the interesting magazines. And we've certainly seen now, as you see the growth of the catalog of interactive content that is different to the print content. So where you've got features that are somewhat engaging with the consumer. We're seeing that helping the consumer find their way around, helping them understand the usability, giving them a consistent experience, and allowing them to purchase in a couple of different ways, sometimes in conjunction with their print, sometimes just by digital only. I think that's where we're sort of seeing the emphasis at the moment. So really on the consumer purchasing model, on the discoverability, and then helping them understand exactly what this new media type is when you've got a digital magazine.
Okay. So Jeanniey, having worked with Zinio over the last decade when I was at Barnes & Noble, I mean, your company has been in digital magazines probably the longest. Relative to what we're seeing now, I mean, is it your view that that we're at a point now where most of the innovation has occurred, or do you anticipate things changing as rapidly as they have in the last 2 years, over the next 2 years?
I think, like we heard in the keynote, we're at a very, very early point in digital innovations. And Zinio's been around 11 years, and we've put a number of various products and business models and innovations and offerings into the market, and we just see it as a very exciting time because for us, it's almost like the beginning. I think what we're seeing through all of our data insights and through all of our consumer trends is about every 6 to 9 months, a significant change in the industry, having nothing to do with our content necessarily as publishers, but more around consumer behavior. Recently, as was mentioned in the keynote, we started to see a lot of householding. So yes, the credit card that has registered on this device may be a 55-year-old man, but the purchases being made are being made by the college-age children and the wives in the household. So householding is a new opportunity for all of us to take advantage of. We think the innovations are just beginning to start to arise.
Great. Since I know Jonathan, having worked with him, I get to ask him a tougher question.
Fire away.
Yeah, okay, great. I mean, and we were chatting about this earlier, but are publishers and consumers facing a winner-take-all strategy? I mean, obviously, and what I'm really talking about is the fact that we have Apple with something north of 50% market share, followed by the Kindle Fire, and then of course followed by the Nook product line. And additionally, we hear these pronouncements each year through the CES, hundreds of tablet manufacturers coming, and nothing really sort of developing beyond what we're seeing today. So from the perspective of a publisher, we're now looking at working with very few tablet manufacturers opposed to many. And I guess I'd like to get your perspective on whether that's going to be a challenge to publishers and the consumer as well in the long term.
Well, I think sort of focusing on the consumer first, that what we've demonstrated over the last year to 18 months is that there's definitely demand and high satisfaction for reading periodical content on these tablet devices. And so the connection to the consumer and these brands is really strong. And so as a publisher, that's what I would focus on, is just continuing to create the best product experiences, building off of those brands, these brand new relationships with incremental readers that are highly satisfied on these devices, and start focusing there. And then how it sort of plays out, the more powerful the brand, the more connections you have with consumers, then the more leverage the brand will have in those environments. And so if it comes to 3 or 4 main tablets and 4 or 5 main distribution points from getting to the consumers, it's really in the control of the publisher, from the power of the brands, what they, the product experience that's created, the discoverability, and working with the newsstands like us to make sure that content is discoverable. Unique models of taking those relationships with customers, building new products and new product experiences, leveraging that content. And so I think the focus would be on establishing those relationships with customers, building incredible value propositions, and then the rest will sort of take care of itself. And then the stronger those relationships, the more leverage and the more impact it will have, regardless of if there's 3, 4, 5 players in the marketplace.
Jeanniey, do you have a view?
Well, I don't think we're anywhere close to having a winner-takes-all strategy right now, just because of the globality of distribution opportunities and outlets. I mean, I certainly think that what Apple's done has moved us all forward, but with the upcoming introduction of a lot of all the Ultrabooks, with the TV integrations that are happening, we're still too early to tell, I think. I agree with Jonathan. I mean, it is about consumer lifestyle, and it is about the brand and the connection that you make with your reader.
Any additional comments, Keith?
Oh, a lot of coverage there. I think that there's one piece, which is the publishers need to be a part of the newsstand itself. I think that there needs to be an opportunity for the publisher to engage with the subscriber, to actually understand the behavior, to help craft new products that can be delivered, and to work on whether it's bundling, whether it's augmented products that sit alongside the magazine, to really start to create that new experience and to really look at incremental revenue. So I think that to say that very rigid and dogmatic newsstands with fairly siloed products are going to win, I think that we're very early to say that. I think that would leave a lot of opportunity behind if that did happen, and I think that keeping the publishers out of the mix is a thing that will limit the long-term value of these brands coming onto the tablet. I think that when you want to start creating new products, when you want to start looking at new revenue streams, It all links back to the workflow. It all links back to the metadata that sits alongside all this content. And for that, you need the publisher involved. So if you just have to, provide this packaged entity that is a magazine and that's it, and you don't get to talk to the consumer, I think that will be severely limiting for the audience here when we look at the opportunity set that's in front of us with the tablets and the growth.
Okay. So, Jonathan, you mentioned the need for publishers to work very closely with the newsstand providers.
Yeah.
Could you speak to what thing, obviously in your position you see publishers doing right things, and you probably see publishers doing some things that maybe aren't exactly right. Do you have any suggestions as to the best way to work with a digital newsstand such as yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, this isn't very insightful, but I think that just having an open dialogue and talking through sort of strategies and roadmaps and where things align is really important. And knowing where things are going, we're pretty open to working with publishers and understanding, what they're doing, what they're working on, and how that aligns, what new products we can build together, what new experiences we can create, how we create better discovery and merchandising, leveraging our assets beyond just the siloed newsstand on the Nook, for example, but how to leverage our stores and our website and on other pieces. And so I think it's just a pretty open dialogue about what's coming and what's to come. We've had some success with that. We launched with 2 different periodical publishers an integrated offering where we bundled a discounted Nook with a annual subscription, and that just came from conversations about how to do things, and it was really successful. And so those are the kind of things we're looking to do. We're looking to figure out ways to, quite frankly, reinvent what a subscription relationship means to a customer, because digital allows you to do that. So what kind of value you can add beyond just getting a current issue and future issues, what services and content you can unlock. That's where I see the future of this going, and we need to create more value so the price-value relationship continues and that the consumer is contributing and paying for brands for what they're worth, and all the effort and cost that goes into that and the quality that comes out. We need to add more value to the equation and figure out how to do that. And we'll only be able to do that collectively, in my opinion.
And what I think is interesting about all of this opportunity for us is when your brand is in a digital publishing space, a lot of your brand cachet goes away, because if you don't know that Esquire even exists, how are you going to be compelled to go on your Nook or go on your Kindle Fire or go on your iPad and look for Esquire? It's about the content. So what we see a lot, and it's still in the high 70s and low 80s, is between 78 and 85% of people who subscribe to digital publications on Zinio have never had a print relationship. This is not considering the bundles. The bundles obviously have had a print relationship with you. But it's new people who are discovering your content from, in Zinio's case, a global perspective. And so what we see as a key defining opportunity for each one of the brands out there and each one of you as publishers is the ability to talk about and share what content's coming up. Not so somebody's going to scoop it. I mean, none of us are interested in scooping what's going to come out on the newsstand, but so we can start to align by content category. And there's a number of opportunities to collectively bundle content. I'll take something really simple and not controversial, sort of, is the election. A lot of your magazines will cover the election, and wouldn't it be great to talk about, for people who are interested in digital magazines, we've got this collection about the election that will not only introduce you to content that you're passionate about, but to publications that carry that in different perspectives. So discoverability is an opportunity to take to another level. And a lot of publishers have focused on specific, this is my brand, you need to know my title, you need to buy it, when what we're really seeing is when you can collectively group around passions, you have a better opportunity to expose your brand and really make a larger impact and do that globally in many cases.
Keith, do you have any additional comments?
Well, clearly the publishers do nothing wrong. I mean, we're funded by publishers, so I have to say that. But that said, I think that maybe something that was has been really interesting to me is there was a little reticence about the digital space. You know, there was a bit of a toe in the water attitude probably going on in the middle of last year. And then you saw a dramatic shift to embracing the digital magazine, realizing that it has value sitting alongside print, working to increase the value of the catalog very, very quickly. And you know, we've seen it as we've seen all these design for tablet publications rolling out pretty fast. I mean, you know, when you're looking at 3 or 4 new interactive titles coming out a month and then trying to get them into a newsstand and all the fun that comes with that and trying to highlight those features that are in those magazines, we saw something where I would say that the publishers were holding back, and I would have somewhat criticized that, obviously, to the point where now, you know, you're seeing this full-blown energy, lots of new and innovative ways of bringing an interactive experience to the magazine. Not all in one way, but I think that's a very exciting thing. So I think that's what they're doing well. I would say the other thing that's interesting is looking at the business models, and now looking, I think, sort of talking a little bit about what Jeanniey was saying about now you've got groups of interest. The next thing is, what do you do with business models when you've got those groups of interest, or when you've got a broad interest? How do you introduce bundles, broader bundles, so that you can bring more people into the reading experience, get cross-brand discoverability and engagement, so that, you know, people who do have a particular interest can really see the breadth of the magazine and can actually purchase multiple magazines within one package. And I think that's sort of where I see, again, the publishers starting to embrace this model of, you know, it's not just about keeping all these brands in their silos, it's now about how do you bring all that curated content up to the next level and make more people engage with it. And that's the exciting stuff I'm seeing happening.
Okay. Yeah. Bundling is one of those areas that it's been mentioned a couple times in this conversation, but also one that I think is certainly something that we're seeing at Rodale, and thinking about how to do bundling. And when I think about bundling, and maybe you have a different perspective or thought around it, it's around bundling additional digital subs. It could be bundling physical with digital. It could even be bundling a magazine with a book, a digital book or a physical book. There's all these variations. And with that, there's also the pricing. Give it away for free, charge it. And so there's a lot of things that need to be worked out and different thoughts going on. And I'd love to get, start with Jeanniey. I'd love to get your thoughts on where you see bundling today and where you might see it evolving over the next couple of months.
Yeah, well, I think you make a great point. There's so many different definitions of what bundling could be. We see some types of bundling have tremendous benefits. And I think right now one of the big questions that we're being asked from a lot of our publishers is, do I make the print available? I mean, do I make the digital available for free if I have a print subscriber? Do I charge them? And I think, you know, there's some publishers out there, and there's actually one in this room, but I won't say their name, who's got this, what I think, and this is my opinion, not the opinion of Zinio, I'll give the disclaimer, a brilliant idea where they're actually making them pay the portion of digital for the rest of their subscription. There's another publisher who's saying it's free until your subscription ends, but then you need to choose print or digital. And both of those make a lot of sense from that print access engagement kind of world. I will say we are still seeing much lower access rates when you're doing the print gets the free digital, because those people are not your hardcore people who fell in love with digital and want to engage it and they haven't put dollars around it. Where we see a lot of opportunity is around bundling unique products. And whether it's books and magazines, whether it's magazines with advertisers' goods, you know, whether it's something as beneficial and simple as Macy's catalog that is shoppable inside a digital version of a magazine. A lot of customers see that as bundling, the opportunity to shop while you read. It's still, again, very early stages for that, and some has a very positive spin from financial model, and the others are just kind of setting you up for failure in the future, because once somebody gets it for free, especially on the Android, they're never going to pay. So you have to choose your devices and access points and financial models really carefully right now.
Yeah, I mean, you know, unfortunately, I don't think it's a one-size-fits-all model. I mean, if you know, looking at sort of these all-access bundles, where if you're a print subscriber, you get it for free. It sort of depends on the product, the price of that print product, or the price, you know, the price and how much the out-of-pocket is. and the value proposition that product delivers and how valuable it is to access that across multiple platforms. So it's really hard to answer. I think it really depends on the brand and testing things and doing research to your consumer base to see what adds the most value there. But I do think that bundling in incremental product is a big opportunity. So, you know, with a core magazine, if you have a book series or if you have video content, if you have other things, that seems like a really big opportunity because in digital it's so easy to cross-promote, cross-market, and then make those bundles from a merchandising standpoint come to life.
And I think the bundles is the early jumping point for upsells. And I think at Rodale, you guys do that brilliantly. Once somebody gets involved with one of your apps, you guys are upselling them, you know, in a phenomenal manner and just kind of getting them addicted, which is great.
Yeah. And so, sort of somewhat related to the bundling is, of course, you know, the view of the newsstand, or to provide that flexibility to experiment, because. And I'd like to get all of your perspectives on that, because ultimately, in some ways, the publisher is somewhat limited by the technology of the newsstand in terms of what they can do. And I'd say my personal opinion at this point is what we're seeing is that there are some limitations with the newsstands with respect to what one could do with bundling. And maybe if you could talk about that, maybe talk about specifically what you might be doing in the future to offer that type of flexibility. Start with Keith.
Yeah, I think, well, there's a couple of things you have to be careful of. The first is give a consumer too many options and they run away. I mean, you know, if you present them with 10 different ways of bundling up your magazine, that can be very dangerous. So we were very careful in choosing the mechanisms to create the initial bundles with print and digital and making it very clear to the consumer. We took a lot of market data that was already out there and we understood exactly what we were going for. We did have to build in some technology for the flexibility of the offer, which allowed the publishers that are on next issue the ability to actually charge different price points for digital alongside print, as well as charging different price points for their monthly offering as well. So the publisher's setting the pricing, but when we gave them some tools to measure how things were going and to play a little bit with the pricing models and the way they were actually merchandising, outside of the newsstand, driving people back in to get the bundles. But when I talk about the simplicity, I think you really want to think about, if you think about broader bundling, and I say that, you know, across titles, across publishers, then again, coming up with simple bundles that the consumer can engage with and start to really experience the digital magazine is what we're seeing. And to be able to then look inside that bundle and really understand how the consumer's engaging, right? So which titles are doing what, how the consumer is actually interacting with those titles, understanding where the value is in that bundle, and helping the publisher then increase their value proposition to that consumer. So that's, it's sort of keep it simple, provide some visibility, and allow some experimentation in there as well so that you can tune the bundling, whether it's within the title and the print digital subscription type of model, or whether it's cross-title with a larger bundle set, understanding exactly how to target that and get the consumer.
I'm thinking it's like experimental kiss. Like I'm going through like my science class and keep it simple, stupid. But I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense, and you know what Jonathan said is true too. At Zinio, I mean, since we've been around so long, we've pretty much made it available to test anything that you can think of. Doesn't mean that we're out there standing on a pedestal saying we have different pricing options and different pricing models. The challenging part comes in for us, and probably for all of us, but I can only speak for Zinio, is when you have to do fulfillment house integration. That tends to slow things down a little bit or delay things as far as innovative modeling goes. But I mean, we've had the option open to do print digital bundles, multiple bundles, cross-publisher bundles, upsell bundles, interactive bundles, non-interactive bundles, and it's been very interesting. It's been on a publisher by publisher basis. Usually through conversations, a publisher would say, gosh, I'm really trying to reach this target. How can I do this? What's interesting at Zinio is we can see the trends and say, okay, if you bought this magazine, there's a high propensity to buy this, so why don't we put 2 magazines together and see if there's an opportunity, or take an entire publishing entity of 42 titles and sell a bundle to all access pass for XYZ publisher. It's really up to all of you to come up with the ideas and innovations to test and to work with all of us up here on putting that into place. But I agree with what Keith said. It does need to come back to a simplistic model down the road. What that is, though, I don't think we've figured out, because with Zinio being on iOS, on Android, on WebOS, on Win 7, on the Playbook, on PCs and Macs, I can tell you, and I look at the data every day, there's absolutely a difference of the price point people will pay on a different device, the amount of items they will buy on a different device, and then where they're reading them. And so it becomes a much more complex question when you start to get into the profitability of it is, at first glance, Android may not look like they're not buying on their devices, and there's not enough Android hardcore tablets in market yet to show us anything other than smartphones, but they're reading like crazy on their smartphones. So does that mean that you should target an offer to an Android device, or do you target an offer to a buyer? And so there's a lot of questions and opportunity for really innovative discussion and what we call innovative merchandising.
Yeah, and I mean, just building on that, because I think we've covered this well. I mean, with Nook, we're actually pretty flexible in sort of our bundling models and that we have integrated, but it's going to be integrated and done in a way that's consistent with the way that we sell, merchandise, and market today. So we're pretty rigid about that and sort of what we have to say to the customer. And then with regard to other sort of flexible, smart opportunities, we'd love to listen to great ideas, but I think the important thing is that we have to look at what the idea can do and that there's potential. And then out of all the ideas, we'd prioritize it with our publishing partners and say, yeah, let's try this or not. We just can't try everything and have 10 things that we throw up against the wall. We want to be pretty disciplined about it. Because you're right, there is a technology constraint, and if you have to build something new, you want to build and focus on an incredible experience and pick the 1 or 2 things that have the most potential for both the publisher and yourself.
Great. Well, I think we just have about 2 minutes left. I'll sort of ask one more question, and I'll throw it to Jeannie, since she's
in the middle.
Yeah, you're in the middle. Look, is there any, anything that you're seeing today with your customer base that is sort of an unmet need, something something that you think is going to be, put out there on newsstands? And we had talked earlier offline about social, which is sort of the hot thing for everything digital today. Is that potentially one of the things that you might see incorporated in a bigger way on newsstands?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, there's some people that are working on social in really innovative ways that are targeted to their demographic, and I think that's key. Marie Claire, 17, National Geographic do phenomenal jobs at bringing the social conversation into their issues and taking it back out. Rob Report has Rob Report TV that has acts as a phenomenal funnel into the digital magazine channel in general through social conversation and exploration. I think social is huge. I think personalization is something that will be coming down the road as far as personal recommendations, personal options, personal proactive analytics. I'm personally a big fan of predictive analytics coming for mobile devices and tablets, because I think that's an area that's lacking right now for all of us. We can look at all the Omniture and web trends and everything else data that we want and see what happened, but when the world is changing so quickly, we want to see what's going to be coming up. So I think association based on content interest is going to be huge, and through that, different monetization models too.
Great. Well, thank you very much. I think our time is up. Anyway, great conversation.
Thank you.
Thanks.